Most people have never even thought about Taiwan. It's a small island, far away from most of the world. But if this island disappeared tomorrow, the global economy would panic, factories would stop, technology prices would explode, and world powers could be pushed toward war. Because Taiwan isn't just another country, it's one of the most important places on Earth, and China wants it back. Taiwan doesn't look important at first. It's small. Most people couldn't even point to it on a map. But this island sits at the center of the modern world, because Taiwan produces something almost every country depends on: computer chips. The tiny pieces of technology inside: phones, cars, servers, fighter jets, and even AI systems. And one company in Taiwan dominates the entire industry: TSMC. A company so important that if its factories stopped working, entire industries across the planet would feel it. But Taiwan is not just important because of technology. For China, the island means something much bigger. The Chinese government has claimed Taiwan for decades. Officially, Beijing still considers the island part of China. And that belief shapes almost everything happening in the region today. Because Taiwan operates like its own country. It has its own government, its own military, its own elections, its own economy. But China refuses to accept that independence. And over the years, the tension has slowly become more dangerous. Military drills around the island have increased. Chinese warships now regularly move through nearby waters. Fighter jets enter Taiwan's air defense zone so often that it has almost become normal. And every time it happens, the same question returns: how close are we to war? Because this is no longer just a political disagreement. This is one of the most dangerous geopolitical flashpoints on Earth. If China ever decided to invade Taiwan, the entire world would feel the consequences immediately. Not just because of war, but because Taiwan sits directly in the middle of global trade routes, technology production, and the balance of power in Asia. And China knows that time may not be on its side forever. Taiwan is becoming more armed. The United States is becoming more involved. And the longer China waits, the more difficult an invasion could become. That's why military experts pay attention every time China launches another exercise near the island, because nobody knows where the line is anymore. A military drill can become a blockade can become a crisis, and a crisis can become a war. But even if China wanted to take Taiwan by force, actually invading the island would be an entirely different problem. Invading Taiwan sounds simple on paper. The island sits only around 130 kilometers away from mainland China, and China has one of the largest militaries on Earth. But in reality, an invasion of Taiwan could become one of the most difficult military operations in modern history. Because before Chinese troops even reach the island, they first have to cross the Taiwan Strait. And that alone is a massive problem. The strait is rough. The weather changes fast. The water can become extremely dangerous for large-scale amphibious operations, especially when thousands of soldiers, armored vehicles, fuel, supplies, and landing ships all have to move at the exact same time. And unlike a surprise attack, Taiwan would see it coming. Satellites would detect troop movements, ships gathering near ports, aircraft preparing for launch, missile systems being activated. An invasion force this large is almost impossible to hide, which means Taiwan would likely have hours, maybe even days, to prepare. And that changes everything. And even if Chinese forces somehow reach Taiwan's shores, the hardest part might only be beginning, because Taiwan is naturally built for defense. Much of the island is covered by mountains. Some of them rise more than 3,000 meters into the sky, which means invading forces can't just move freely across the island. Roads become narrow, supply lines become vulnerable, and entire military columns can get trapped between mountains and the coast. But geography is only part of the problem. Taiwan is also one of the most densely populated places on Earth. Major cities are packed with millions of people, dense streets, concrete infrastructure, tight urban environments, and urban warfare is notoriously brutal. Even for the world's most powerful militaries, every building becomes cover. Every street becomes a choke point, Every kilometer becomes slower, more expensive, and more dangerous, which means even if an invasion begins successfully, controlling Taiwan would be an entirely different challenge. But the real danger goes far beyond Taiwan itself, because Taiwan is deeply connected to the global economy. The island produces a massive percentage of the world's advanced semiconductors, the tiny chips that power smartphones, data centers, cars, artificial intelligence, and much of the modern world. Which means a war over Taiwan wouldn't stay regional for long. Factories could shut down, global supply chains could collapse, technology companies could lose access to critical components, and entire industries could slow down almost overnight. Some experts believe the economic damage from a Taiwan conflict could reach trillions of dollars, potentially triggering one of the largest economic shocks in modern history. Because in today's world, wars are no longer fought only with soldiers and missiles. They're also fought through economics, technology, and global dependency. And that's where the situation becomes even more dangerous. Because Taiwan is not completely alone. The United States has spent decades building military alliances and strategic influence across the Pacific. American forces are already stationed throughout the region, from Japan to Guam to South Korea, which means a conflict over Taiwan could quickly pull multiple countries into the same war. And once major powers become directly involved, escalation becomes far harder to control. A single missile strike, a naval collision, or even a political miscalculation could suddenly push the conflict far beyond Taiwan itself. And in a world filled with nuclear powers, that possibility becomes terrifying. Because the real fear isn't just invasion, it's how quickly a regional conflict could become something much larger. And if a war over Taiwan ever happened, the consequences wouldn't stay on battlefields for very long, because the modern world depends on systems that most people never even think about. Container ships moving through narrow sea routes, massive ports operating day and night, factories producing millions of products every week, semiconductor plants powering everything from smartphones to artificial intelligence systems, undersea internet cables carrying enormous amounts of global data, financial markets reacting to events in seconds. Most people never notice how connected everything really is, until something breaks. And Taiwan sits near the center of many of those systems. A conflict around the island could disrupt some of the busiest shipping routes on Earth. Cargo delays could spread across global trade networks within days. Factories in other countries could suddenly run out of critical components. Technology companies could struggle to maintain production. Prices for electronics, vehicles, fuel, and energy could rise almost immediately. And financial markets around the world would react in real time, not months later, not weeks later, but instantly. Because modern economies move at digital speed. And in a deeply connected world, panic spreads fast. Governments would rush to secure supply chains. Companies would scramble to protect manufacturing. Global markets would become unstable. And political pressure inside major countries could rise very quickly. But the biggest problem is uncertainty, because nobody can fully predict how far a conflict like this could spread once it begins. A shipping disruption becomes an economic crisis. An economic crisis creates political instability. Political instability creates even more global tension, and suddenly, a regional conflict starts affecting countries thousands of kilometers away from Taiwan itself. That's what makes the situation so dangerous. A war over Taiwan wouldn't just be about territory. It would test how fragile the modern global system really is, because for the first time in human history, so much of the world depends on systems that are deeply connected to one another, and once those systems start breaking, the consequences can spread across the planet very quickly. For decades, the world has depended on the idea that globalization would keep major powers connected, that trade would prevent catastrophic wars, that modern economies had become too interconnected to risk total collapse. But Taiwan sits at the center of a dangerous contradiction, because the same systems that connected the modern world together also made it more fragile. A single island now helps power global technology, global manufacturing, global trade, and the balance of power between the world's strongest nations, which means the real danger is no longer just military conflict. It's the possibility that one crisis could destabilize the systems the entire world depends on. And maybe that's why Taiwan matters so much. Not because of its size, but because modern civilization has become deeply connected to what happens there. And if that connection ever breaks, the consequences may reach far beyond Taiwan itself.